Hey everyone's Classic DM. Today I want to talk to you about Victrix models for your tabletop role-playing games. Now, most people, when they think of wargaming models, they think of huge Napoleonic cavalries, and they think of lots of things you got to put together, and the models have these different shapes and sizes. If you ever play Warhammer, you know how that hobby is. I mean, it's a hobby in of itself to, get entire models and then put them together and change the way that they're configured, change their weapon loads out, whether you're doing World War II or fantasy stuff. There's all kinds of companies that make miniatures and models. So what's the difference between miniatures and models, and what's the purpose of the video? Okay, well, we're going to talk about that a little bit. I want to kind of read to you something from the Victrix newsletter they sent out, which is really cool. And I've taken some of the images from it. I'm going to read to you from the Victrix actual how they bring their miniatures to life blog, which I thought was quite interesting. I thought we would do that first, and then we can talk about what's going to work best for you in your game when you're playing D&D or Traveler or whatever you're playing. I'm playing even my own game, Decimation, Kingdoms and Empires. So this is how things begin, and it's very similar to what we do in the video game industry. In fact, they use some of the same exact tools. So in essence, this is quoting from them, every year we create thousands of unique miniatures, ancient Greeks, Vikings, Romans, Napoleonics, the list goes on. Creating that perfect figure is a complex and challenging process, from the sketchboard to the wargaming table. We'd like to take you through the process of how our miniatures are actually made. And if you take a look here, in the video game industry, we're doing characters, guns, levels. We always start off with concept art. We've got to have a big vision, and then we start coming with the concept pieces. But these guys are doing historically accurate wargaming miniatures for wargaming of particular time periods, particular types of armies. There's a lot more to it in the wargaming world than there is in the tabletop role-playing game world. However, we all know that D&D is based upon pretty much kind of medieval style wargaming. I mean, there's no black powder weapons in it. There's no science fiction per se, unless you think of a few of the modules have some wacky stuff in it, like Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. So it starts off with concepts, and then it goes to what's called a digital sculpt, and they do a few runs of making the figure, and then they have finished painted miniatures at the end. But there's a lot more to it than that, right? It all starts with them deciding the historical period and seeing as there's so many different periods to choose from. The first challenge is finding one that the Victrix community will enjoy. Now, Victrix is a British company. A lot of war gamers are British folks, and over there in Europe, a lot Americans are more bolt action, World War II. Not as many are historical wargaming as they are. The UK gentlemen love wargaming. It's a huge tradition, very, very, very popular over there. This is where all the rule sets come from for Warhammer and everything else. So Victrix fills a gap of creating an alternative to Warlord games and stuff. Warlord is probably the #1 model creator in all of the UK. Victrix is a smaller operation, but they have very, very good attention to detail. Let's read some more here. Once they pick the time frame, it's really down to the research. This stage can be quite challenging as it involves gathering a comprehensive knowledge of the given period. Every tiny detail needs to be accounted for to make sure the figure is historically accurate as possible. Armor, weapons, facial expressions, facial hair, haircuts, body shapes. We all love a fat Viking. How they use their weapons, underhand, overhand grip, what kind of warriors they were, etc. No stone is left unturned to make our miniatures as realistic as possible. Now, for us in the D&D, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever world you're coming from, or any other alternative rule system, we always, chainmail, plate mail, broadsword, bastard sword, long sword. These are spears. These are all generic things for us. We can get WizKids' pre-cut miniatures, and the Song of Fire and Ice figures are great too. They're fantastical, actually, but they don't have that gritty kind of realistic guard of the Village of Hamlet kind of vibe, or the city-state of the Invincible Overlord, or the Caverns of Thracia. It doesn't have that true historical Greyhawk vibe, because if you're a big fan of Greyhawk and you read the Gazetteer, that's pronounced correctly, you realize that all of Greyhawk is really kind of based on a number of kingdoms with different kinds of rulerships and religions and populations. So let's continue on. Let's talk about the sculpting phase, right? Once they've done these concept art and they start figuring out, like, here's how the position should be, this is what's going to happen when it's going to be a rider leaning forward. These sketches, we do the same thing in the video game industry. We're doing characters and everything else. And once we get these really dirty, grimy, fast, rough sketches, either actual pen and paper or digitally done, then we can move into an early modeling phase. And it's very similar for the guys making models for wargaming. After they gather as much information as possible, time to decide on the composition of the set, specifically how many figures are going to be in the set. And they call it a set, which means like you get a package of 40 miniatures. They are not assembled, right? They have left arm, right arms, bow. You know, you can adjust the positions of them when you're putting them together and rotate the arms and legs and the positions. A lot of times, like the upper and lower body is separated, the head is separated, the weapon is separated, and the arms are separated. This is very true. So like, if you're building World War II characters, you need a guy with a Panzerfaust, you can do that. You can swap that out with a guy with an MP40. It's the same thing with like building Vikings. You know, a guy can have a shield and a sword or broadsword or a bow, whatever you want. The flexibility of wargaming means you can build enemies to suit your campaign, and it's fun building and painting them as a hobby. Even if they're ugly, still just splashing some color on them is fantastic. That stage that they're talking about here for the sets involves sketching every figure and its separate parts, the various arm positions, the face, the weapons, and so on, and they'll work out how these parts are going to be used, because it becomes a jigsaw puzzle. If you've ever seen one of my other videos about Victrix miniatures or other miniatures, you realize that once they actually have everything done and you buy it, when you open up the package, it's not a finished figure that looks like this. A lot of times it's going to be something that's in pieces and parts. You got to put it together. Now this is a phase, right? Once those sketches are sent off to our digital sculptors who use computer-aided design CAD software to turn these sketches into digital files, they utilize digital technology to make unlimited corrections to design something like possible hand-sculpted models. This is true. In the video game industry, we use ZBrush a lot. ZBrush allows us to build extremely high resolution, extremely high detailed models that don't go in the final game, but become a basis for baking of all kinds of art assets and art texturing that happens. And it's very complicated. They may use a computer-aided design software. They may be using ZBrush. I've seen some of their work before, and it looks like ZBrush, but they're probably talking about CAD software here, just to let you know that once it goes from that, it goes from sketches into digital, right? And what you're seeing here is not the final model that you're going to get. The unique thing about their sculpting team is, first and foremost, they're actually artists. Our sculptors' artistic background enables the creation of the most realistic models, even covering details like the skin types and emotions expressed on a soldier's face. The digital file must be created for each individual part of the figure: head, arm, body, weapon, etc. This is a long, complex process for our sculptors. It takes 30 to 40 hours each figure. And that, imagine making a set, you know, there's 40 units in a set. I mean, you're talking about like months and months of work, or multiple people, men and women, working in digital programs to get these things set up right, because they're setting up the models for how they actually print and create them, which is very different than some of the old school Airfix one-shot pieces molded miniatures that you might see. Now, there is a phase, speaking of molding, there's a phase called molding. After each figure is given a set of these digitally created, they start this molding phase. They take each figure and determine the layout of the sprue. The sprue is like the plastic frame that holds everything together, and I'll show you some of that on the website here in just a minute. And because many of you probably just been, well, the old school guys maybe remember the Ralpatha Grenadier lead figures, and they graduated into plastic minis in the mid 2000s, and then later on we start having people making all kinds of other miniatures. But Whiz Kids and Bones have been making most of the ready to go one position elf magic user. You don't really have any options, just the colors. So once that digital file is created, they send it off to the tool room. And what really sets the Victrix models apart is their unrivaled level of detail. It's the quality of the tools they use by their high-tech digital tool designers. Extensive level of expertise makes the finest quality machinery available. They use a CNC milling machine, okay, to scan the digital file in order to create a custom steel tool for that sprue. Okay, you want to look that up. A CNC milling machine is a computer-driven machine that will carve out, as opposed to doing layer, like you might have people that do 3D printing out of resin. This is a proper manufacturing type of a tool. This involves cutting cavities in the steel to replicate the design of the sprue and its components for a mold. As you can imagine, a tool needs to be incredibly fine to account for things such as faces, belt buckles, and chainmail. As a result, the CNC machine may take anywhere 6 to 12 weeks to complete a tool. Now, they're referring to the word tool here is what does it actually look like to make the final mold? Now, if someone wants to correct me, that would be great, but that's the way that I understand it. I did some side research on how CNC machines work and how that's done with digital carving, and I was like, wow, that's really impressive. They have to do some test molds and then see how they work. So once they're happy with the tool, they'll produce product samples. The samples, what you're seeing here, are sent off for a design team who then mark it up like you're seeing here, like rotate the arm, do this, angle of the arm from the top, I mean, the attention to do not want this stopping, don't want this rolling shoulder. I mean, look at the detail here. You can see where someone has sketched, like move this leg back a bit, move this arm forward. That's amazing. I mean, the back and forth between the original sketches and the actual creation of the mold, and then going back to make the adjustments and then redoing the tool. I mean, that's really, really, really impressive. The attention to detail is insane. They could have just left it with the first run and call it even. And maybe people like you and I who aren't hardcore historical war gamers, we wouldn't notice. But hardcore war gamers are going to notice some details, right? I thought that was really, really impressive. Very, very, very committed to quality, which what sets a lot of the Victrix stuff apart from some other copycats. Now, they're not the best. I don't know whether they're the best. There's a number of UK miniature model creators, and I'm not taking anything away from any of them. They're all amazing. Nothing here in the States compares to the work being done by the UK model groups that make stuff for wargaming. So bring in the once they get everything where they like it, and once they get the tool refined, this is when they repeat it several times, they were completely satisfied, then they start the mass production of the set. And you end up with guys like this, characters that they always advertise and show their models painted and little war bands, things like that. The thing about these types of miniatures and models that's so interesting compared to what you would have in, let's say, WizKids, is you have the flexibility to create models and miniatures for your table based upon what your theme is. Let's just go here to their website. You can set their website to English United States dollars, by the way. I bought a lot of stuff from these guys. Let's just take a look at the Vikings, which I actually own this set. When I talked about a sprue, if you ever play Warhammer Online, this is what a sprue looks like. You open the box, in their case, a lot of times it's a bag, and you have this big thing of parts, right? And it's a little guide thing that says, okay, here's a left arm for the spear, right arm for the spear. And you can even see here from the upper torso that this guy here doesn't have the upper and lower torso separated with the way his armor is. You can put different arms on him. So this gives you a lot of flexibility. It's even not quite as much flexibility as you have in bolt action, but it's not as necessary because the uniforms are as identical. So, and then you get one of these things, you can say, well, listen, I want to put the cloak on this guy, and they'll give you some inspirational pictures of like, what does it look like with a guy with a sword and a shield, or with a spear, or a two-handed axe. And they're just brilliant. And they're it's very inspirational to see miniatures, which taps into our little kid inside, and come up with a game design or a module design that could utilize these guys. Because if you've ever run a campaign, like when I first started this channel, and we did a metrics video the other day, and I wanted to run the setting of the Hill Giant Chief, I used tokens because I couldn't get the right miniatures for all these hill giants and the orcs and the ogres and the wolves and the cloud giants. I couldn't get them. They had like a few fire giants. That was it. So I used tokens. And when you're running an adventure and you're using a tabletop and you're in person, it's just so much nicer to have miniatures. And I've made videos about how to do battle maps and stuff like that. So what's the deal of me pitching and doing this? This isn't sponsored by Victrix. What I'm trying to do is share with you a technique that you might find really, really cool. So you can head to their website, which is victrixlimited.com, and take a look at all their historical wargaming miniatures and say, this is 36 superbly detailed miniatures for $34. Now, you have to put work into them, right? You got to put them together. But it's not as bad as you might think. It's not as bad as some of the Warhammer Online stuff. And you might find that once you start gluing these together and putting a primer on there, you might check out some YouTube videos about how to put a white primer versus a dark matte black primer, how to do different types of painting, how to paint metal, how to make them look pretty good, even if you don't have good eyesight. It's a lot of fun. And when you're putting together these types of miniatures and models, it's you can really bring your campaign to life because you don't have this generic placeholder stupid miniature that doesn't make any sense. So that's really what I wanted to go over today and share that with you, because when I got that blog in the email, which I basically kind of share with you today, I was like, man, I'd like to share this on my channel because a lot of people probably don't even do this. And if you've got any suggestions or comments that you want to share about what you do at your table for the face-to-face gaming, leave a comment below and share your ideas with other people too, especially if you can leave a link for something that you found that's really awesome. All right, cool. We're going to leave it at that, and we'll talk to you guys again real soon. Take care now.